I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Today, my guest is Jessica Rose. She is the owner and lead designer of Quiltd Studios. As a lifelong quilter, Jessica has always had sewing on the brain, but as she started to develop her own style, she couldn't really find quilts that matched her aesthetic and started to design patterns that fit that aesthetic. And thankfully for her and for the rest of us, she has created an amazing space for stylish designs that can fit into any modern space. So please enjoy my chat with Jess. Well, thank you, Jessica, for joining me today. How's it going?
It's going so good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Well, I have been following you for a while, and so I've seen a lot of your stuff, but let's go to the beginning. Like, where did quilting enter your life and all
The very beginning, all the way to I was born. No, so I actually grew up in Seattle, in the Seattle area, so right at the base of
Okay.
Mount Rainier. And my grandmother quilted and my great grandmother quilted. So it was actually kind of in the family. Um, but my mom, surprisingly enough, wasn't really a quilter, but she crafted a lot. So she did every kind of craft you can imagine, she did it. So she kind of taught me how to do like the basics of sewing and things like that. And then when I was probably about 10 or 12, I started making my own quilts on my great grandmother's old machine. And it was really fun, but also very difficult, learning on this kind of ancient machine. Looking back, I'm kind of glad I learned on an older machine because in some ways, like you really have to know how to sew, and
Mhm.
every old machine has its own like little quirky things about it. So yeah, I grew up quilting really, and I had a very supportive church community, and it was a very common thing for quilting to happen at activities and things like that. So it really was kind of part of my life, all growing up. As much as other people didn't know that, but on the weekends and during the summers and stuff like that, I would work on quilts. So yeah, that's really how it began.
That's awesome. So you've really just, it's always been around and it's not just like a random hobby you picked up like a lot of us, but
No, I will say I have picked up almost every other hobby you can imagine. I think creative people are just, we're like, do I like calligraphy? Do I like,
Mhm.
acrylic? Do I like painting? Like we've all tried everything. So I've
Mhm.
done that as well, but quilting always seemed to be something that I went back to, which is nice. It feels like a consistent thing I've always loved.
Yeah, and it's like a home base for the other crafty endeavors because it's like you can get so far in and then sometimes you just reach a limit and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then you always have
Mhm.
something you can return to that you love, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
that's really nice. That's so cool. So how like how on the radar was having your own like quilting business for you? Like, was it ever something you really thought about as you were
No,
like going to
no,
college or?
never. I never ever thought about that ever. So basically, I studied history in college. So for undergrad, I did history and Italian studies, and I planned on going to law school. That was my whole plan all along. And looking back, it's actually kind of funny that that was my plan because I don't know that being a lawyer is like a great end goal to have, but that was really what I thought. And then I took the LSAT the day after my husband and I got married. And
Whoa.
I went when I know I was hardcore. I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm gonna do it.
Wow.
And
Commitment times
yeah,
two.
I felt bad for him. I was like, listen, I have to go to bed early.
Yeah, you're like honeymoon later.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Poor guy. That really started us off on the right foot though, I think.
Yeah. You're like,
So
this is how this is.
exactly. So I went through the interview process and it just never felt right. It just never really fell into place. And for some reason it just didn't flow. And I was like, I think I might have to change my entire life plan. And it was really difficult, but I just took a job kind of working in administration and business and things like that, and then ended up in HR as I kind of tried to figure out my life. And I really enjoyed HR, mostly because it you did a little bit of everything. You know, you weren't just doing spreadsheets, you were working with people, you were working on presentations, you were counseling, you know, like it was just so
Mhm.
fun to be able to do a little bit of all these things. And so I ended up doing human resources for a while. And then I went back recently and got my master's degree in organizational development to continue on in my journey of, you know, business and things like that. So what's really funny is that I finished my master's while my husband was in medical school, and he, for the last year and a half of his training, had to travel full time to go from hospital to hospital for his rotations. And I was alone a lot, more than a lot. I was alone most of the time. And I have two little girls. And so it's not like I could just leave the house. You know, I was just there. And I'm not one who likes to be bored. You know, I think all creatives, like we like to tinker and we like to just
Mhm.
like be busy. And so I actually started quilting again. I haven't quilted in a long time. We've lived in small apartments as we were in med school and, you know, traveling and things. And so it wasn't really that feasible. Um, but then that last year, I just started quilting so much, and I was like, wow, I forgot how much I love this. Like, I love quilting. I haven't done this in so long.
Yeah.
It's been so fun to go back to it. And while I was looking for a job in training and development, which I just got my master's in, I decided to design my first quilt pattern. And I wasn't planning on making a business. I was just going to design a pattern and then put it on Etsy. And I was like, you know, maybe I'll make a couple of $100 to offset like my fabric, you know,
Mhm.
costs and things like that. Like
Yeah.
we're still poor med student, like he, you know,
Mhm.
it would be nice to have that. And so I designed Sitakuzo, which is that gingham pattern.
Mhm.
And I went through Quilter's Candy, her design course, which was very helpful. There's so many things I didn't know
Yeah.
about quilt patterns. What's funny is that I was very overconfident. Looking back, I was like, I can't believe I just sat down and was like, I'm going to design my own pattern just because, you know.
Yeah.
But I thought that I had made so many quilt patterns that I was like, I could do this. Like,
Mhm.
I've read 100 of these. Like, I'm pretty sure I could just kind of finagle my way through and see what they do and just make my own pattern, you know, that way.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, after going through her course and, you know, just learning all about it, I was like, wow, I'm really glad I did that. So at that point I was like, you know, I might as well commit to creating just a small little business. And then it kind of snowballed from there. I was like, well, if I'm gonna have one pattern, I might as well have a website. And if I have a website, I might as well have an Instagram. And if I have an Instagram, I might as well have Flowdesk for email marketing. You know, like it just like
Yeah.
I don't even know what I was thinking in the beginning. I was like,
Yeah.
I was not planning on building a business, but um yeah, it just blew up. Like
That's crazy.
honestly,
That's
it
so
did.
cool.
Yeah, it
Like,
was really crazy.
yeah. And that like snowball, like as you were explaining that, it just like so like my teacher brain was like ding, but like just reminded me of those stories like if you give a moose a muffin or
Yes,
if
that's
you give a mouse a
exactly what it
cookie.
was.
I was
Yes,
like,
that was me. Yeah, so be
I'm like,
careful, you know, if you're
yeah.
gonna design a pattern. I will say though that I'm someone who I like to commit, you know, like I'm not doing things half aid. Like
Yeah.
I go all in on things. And so I think that helped because I was like, I did have to say to myself though, if this doesn't work out, that's okay. You know, let's
Yeah.
say 6 months in, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I
Mhm.
had to give myself that flexibility there. You know, and so that really helped. You know, I wasn't scared anymore of failing because
Yeah.
when you start something new, especially if you're creative, I think you're scared it's just it's going to be like everything else you started that you didn't love. And you
Mhm.
know, and so I was really nervous about that in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of nerve-wracking because you're like, okay, I'm putting my personal view out there about, you know, how I view the quilting world or how I view this business and like are
Yeah.
other people going to have that same vision or resonate with it? And it's so scary. It's like, I hope
It is
this
so
works.
scary. Yeah, you do have to make yourself pretty vulnerable. And I am someone who is pretty um introverted and somewhat conservative, as far as personality goes.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not I'm not super outgoing, and I've never wanted to be really in front of the camera. I've never wanted a lot of attention, and I think to start this, I really had to overcome some of that fear that I had of being judged, really.
Mhm.
I was so scared that someone would see me and be like, "I hate you." And I'd be like,
Yeah.
Why did you say that?" But I
I
knew
didn't
that
do
the
anything.
internet I knew that the internet could be kind of a scary place, and so,
Mhm.
I will say, though, that that fear was unfounded and that 99% of every comment and email I get is really kind. Even if they don't like my designs, they're still really nice, and I think
Yeah.
that's been really, really comforting.
That's awesome. And I think too, yeah, it can be scary because people can be so mean. But I think ultimately, even like what you're saying, even the negative comments, I think are in the quilting world, at least from my perspective, is that they're like, I understand that you're doing something really vulnerable. And so I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but this is the experience I had. And it's like, okay, thank you for
Yeah.
honoring where I'm coming from. And I can honor where you're coming from. And like
Mhm.
just taking that 2 seconds to step away from anger before you comment is like it's a
I
huge
know.
deal because we are like we're putting our heart and soul into these businesses that we've created out of like the the ideas that come from us. Like this isn't
Mhm.
just some like product that's already made that I'm just like selling and I don't care what you comment. Like I made this.
Yes, for sure. It's really hard. I think that you do have to have thick skin, and I think I kinda learned that already in business, though, like, not
Mhm,
to take things too personally. So I think that helps having a background in, working where I did. I think it was helpful when I approached it. I didn't have unrealistic expectations. I knew that there would be some small amount of negativity. I knew that I would run into people who had different opinions than me, and
mhm.
and that was okay. My whole goal really was to create a positive, peaceful space within quilting and a really like modern, stylish space. And I think um, that's really like what I seek after with everything that I do.
Yeah. Well, it's coming through. I mean, all of your social presence and your online presence feels very cohesive, very calm, and just like,
That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad you say
yeah,
that.
it's working. So, like, and I love that. I love when, you can tell that like the aesthetic on one end, like your Instagram matches your website and like whether that's genuine or not, like it feels genuine because everything flows. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like, oh, she threw something crazy in there. I wonder if that's really what she wants instead of feeling like stuck in this rut. But
No, for sure. I think that I created a brand that was an extension of my personal style, and that really helps. It was never something that I had to come up with. It was always like, would I like this pattern? Would I put this in my bedroom? Do I like these colors? Would I put them on my wall? And I run it through that filter. And that's very, very helpful.
yeah, yeah, and it's helps to know what your style is because like some of us
Totally. You definitely
don't really
do.
know.
Yes, that is for sure. I do think I had a very defined sense of like interior design and like what I loved.
Mhm,
And so when I started designing quilts, really the whole reason I got into it was because I was looking for a quilt pattern for my husband.
mm,
He's giant. He's 6'4",
okay.
he's not 6'4", he's like 6'2" or 6'3". And, I was like, "Man, this has to be a giant quilt pattern. It can't be too feminine because it's for him."
Yeah.
And I, like, struggled for, like, months. I was trying to find this, like, stylish but masculine, like,
Mhm,
kind of sense, like, it was genderless and I could put it on our bed, and I just could not find anything that didn't have, like, butterflies and triangles and
mhm.
stripes and flowers, and I was like, "I just feel like there we're missing something in the quilting world."
Yeah,
And so that's when I was like, "Okay, well, whatever we're missing, that's what I wanna provide. That's what I
yeah,
wanna start designing too."
yeah. I think that's the whole deal with, entrepreneurship and starting a business is like you find a need or a missing piece in a, pretty well established, uh,
Yeah.
business world, I guess, of quilting, but then it's like there's still niches to fill. There's still
Oh,
gaps in it
totally.
for because there's so many different perspectives and people have such different ideas for what they want. And so when someone like
Exactly.
you comes along and has a very clear vision of what you want and can create it, then it just like, oh great, now I don't have to try to figure out how to design my own quilt pattern because someone else
Yeah.
just translated what's in my brain. And like I
Yeah.
I just love seeing that because I think I don't know if you were hesitant about putting out patterns at all, but I think some people hesitate because there are a lot of people designing patterns
Yes. Well, it's
and
that age old, like, everything's been done already, especially in art, I think in design, it's difficult to look around and think that, like, there's a place for you.
mhm,
But I certainly think that there is a place for everyone. Everyone has a unique take on things. So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think too like yeah, there is room for everyone and if you're not finding what you are looking for out there, then that means that other people are not finding it either. Like,
Yes,
you're not
exactly.
alone in that, so
Mhm.
that's kinda cool. And,
Yeah.
it does seem like, even though your undergrad wasn't specifically for that, it seems like maybe your graduate degree is helping you
Oh, for sure.
with
Yeah,
the business
definitely.
aspect and, like, it
Yeah.
probably I mean, having been a teacher and same not same thing, but, like, having worked with parents and, like, just lots
Yeah.
of crazy
Oh, I bet.
conversations,
I
like
bet.
like, that definitely has also helped, like, in situations where I'm like, I will get the sharp sweats and be like, "I don't know what to say," but then I'm like, "No, I do know what to say. I've done this 1,000 times." Like,
Yes.
I think unless you've experienced that beforehand in some aspect, it can be so scary putting yourself out there and then having to deal with other people's crap, like,
Yes,
because
or any real customer service issue that comes up, is
yeah.
is difficult. I think though you can make it more difficult if here's the thing, my mom is amazing. She is the most outgoing, like, wonderful party animal you can imagine, and everyone just loves her. And she worked in customer service for a long time, and she would always come home and say things like, "The customer is always right." Like, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you lose $10 over a pattern. It doesn't matter if, like, A, B, and C, like, you have to think long-term relationships. So,
Mhm,
whatever I can do to make sure that every single customer interaction is, like, positive, I will do. So even if that means I take a hit in any way, I will
mhm,
always make sure that, if they weren't satisfied with something, they couldn't find something,
mhm.
"I'm so sorry, here's a gift card," like, whatever I can do to make sure that you leave this experience knowing that I'm committed to
Mhm.
this, relationship lasting. Like, that's what I really prioritize.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are some balances, like, I think in a lot of instances, like, yeah, just default on the side of, like, customers already always right, and I think ultimately, like, if that's your main kind of trajectory on customer service, like, that definitely helps out, but there are sometimes, in my opinion, like, this is just from my experience too, like, there are some boundaries that just like, I'm not willing to let people cross for my business's sake and for my own sake, like, especially, like, doing what I do in the, quilty sphere is, like, a little different. I'm not designing patterns, I'm, like, making quilts, and so there is a
Oh,
line
okay.
where it's, like,
Yes, like, I'm sure that could be but
it's
yeah. It's
like
different when I have a digital I have
right.
digital goods that are a little less,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I can't imagine if you yeah, that would be very hard.
But it's, like, I do yeah, like, we're having worked in customer service and having worked in, at this in a school setting and all these different places, it's, like, 99% of the time, yes, like, just default on the side of the
Yeah,
customer's always right and help
yeah,
them have a good experience and, like, because then that just, like, benefits your business in the long run, like, yeah, maybe you lost $10 in that situation, but, like, they're gonna then tell the next person, like, "Oh, there was a problem, but, they worked really hard to help me and make sure that I got what I was looking for," and, like, that speaks volume, that mouth to mouth? Word of mouth? I'm so sorry, that's
this is a
ridiculous.
vision in my mind.
That mouth to mouth communication,
Yikes.
Oh my goodness, no. Word of mouth, excuse me.
I knew what you meant. We all knew what you meant.
Oh my god. Oh, sorry. I haven't flubbed something up like that in such a long time. That is so silly.
You shouldn't
Okay,
take that
anyway.
out. You should keep that in.
Anyway, the
Yes.
word of mouth that comes from those interactions is worth more than that $10 ever would have been. Like,
Oh, totally. Yeah. And in the
that's
long run, for sure. Yeah. I will say, like you said, there are boundaries, and maybe some of those boundaries can be communicated like upfront. And I think that helps eliminate some of the stuff that comes on later on.
mhm.
If you presented everything very clearly from the beginning,
Yeah.
that's kind of nice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes, especially as women in business, like it's hard to overcome that idea that like you need to be nice
Oh, yes.
and like don't question people. But that's when I think for me, I've gotten into some pickles in communication of just like, oh my gosh, we were totally on the wrong page. Like, because I didn't clarify, it's definitely a me problem and something that I've had to like
Yeah.
overcome. But yeah, like when you're the face and you're the communicator and you're the person in your business that is dealing with these things, it's like it's worth it to kind of be upfront and maybe feel like you're being rude. But I think ultimately if you're just being honest and like in the
Hmm.
kindest way possible, like then
Yeah.
it helps the customer understand what they're signing up for when they engage with your business, which, can be different in
Hmm.
different environments. But
Yeah.
I can imagine just like the digital nature of your business probably makes a lot of that a lot more smooth.
It's not, yeah, it's not nearly as hard. There's no, there's a lot. I sell like some physical patterns, but honestly, yeah, having the digital patterns really does make things easier.
Yeah, that's so cool. So like what is your designing structure? Like are you a structured kind of you go in or you have set times where you're working and you're designing during those times, or do you just kind of do it when it comes to you? Like what does a day look like for you?
So I actually still work. I still work in training and development in the mornings. So I do that every morning, and then in the afternoons I usually work on Quiltd Studios. So I think I I've always been one to be pretty organized. And so I have like a planner, I have a calendar, I have like a marketing plan, I have blog posts planned out for the next 4 months. Like I have things in place so that way I don't feel like I'm scrambling around last minute for
Mhm.
something most of the time. Occasionally there's some weeks where I'm like, like I need to get on this. But I think that really helps. And I've also, before I worked in HR, I worked a little bit with entrepreneurs in a different position. And I actually never thought I would be an entrepreneur because of how hard it looked.
Mhm.
They were always like sleep deprived and tired and stressed out. And I was like, yeah, I never want to do that.
Yeah.
That looks horrible.
You're like, "No, thank you."
So now that I'm here, I just think it's so ironic. I'm like, wow, that's hilarious.
Mhm.
I think having good boundaries, which is actually, sorry, hold on, my earpod fell out, which is actually super hard for me. I didn't know this, but I'm kind of a workaholic. So
Mhm.
I have to really stop myself from working more than I should. Um, so yeah, if you let me, I would just work nonstop forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for me, I set goals and then I kind of figure out what things I want to do that will lead me there.
Mhm.
As far as designing goes, it's a much more creative process. I usually find inspiration from all sorts of different places, history books, thrifting, antiques,
Mhm.
going to art stores, things like that. I just love seeing what's stylish and beautiful and like West Elm or Restoration Hardware, Pottery Barn. I gain a lot of inspiration from like very current things.
Mhm.
Um, and then I just plan around those, quilt pattern releases. So sometimes the releases take longer than I would like, but I've never really held myself to an unrealistic standard. I think like I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways, but
Mhm.
I think I'm also very like, if I get this out this week versus next week, like it's not going to make that big of a deal, like
Yeah.
so I give myself some room there.
Yeah, that's good. And then too, like if you're if you're with a larger group, like a larger company, then it's like you're kind of on their timeline versus if you're doing it for yourself and your own business, then
Totally.
you get the
Yes.
flexibility to say, I'm gonna put this off a week because I need to fine tune some things. And you're not like
Yes.
crunching someone else's style by, messing
Mhm.
up their schedule. It's like that's probably
Totally.
so much
It
more
is really
freeing.
nice. I will say though that I do try to hold myself like I'd say 85% of the time I try to meet my own deadlines. And I think that helps having a sense of accountability to yourself. As a business owner, it's really easy to be like, well, I'll do that next week, or like,
Right.
well, it's not, there's no big rush. When
Yeah.
in reality, like, then you just start putting lots of things off.
Hmm.
So I try to be my own boss in some ways, and report to myself. And I
Yeah.
really do try my hardest to like be very consistent.
Yeah. That's important. And I think too, like when you come from a super structured environment to then working for yourself, majority of the time, you're like, wait, nobody's going to tell me what to do.
I know. Yeah,
That's an
exactly.
area where I struggle. Like I thrive under structure, but to create that structure for myself, I'm like, okay, I have some work to do because
I know. It's easiest to do the things that you love, right?
Mhm,
So like I noticed for myself, like the things that I'm always drawn to and the things I do first are like the things I enjoy the most.
mhm,
And so oftentimes I will just say like, okay, I can't sit down and design another quote pattern until I write a blog post, I write an email, like I reach out to these people and then I can have an hour to myself to just like design.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I like that. I like that. Kind of build in some structure. It's like,
yeah.
reward yourself a little when you've done the hard things and
Oh,
that can
totally,
be
yeah,
so
and I'm not
hard, but
perfect at that, I'm definitely not perfect at it, but that does help
yeah,
me usually, yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. So, what do you I think I saw you're a Bernina babe. You're doing the Bernina
So I am a guest blogger for Bernina, yes.
that's awesome. So
Mhm.
what do you sew on? Like, what do you have?
I so for the longest time, so in high school, my parents I finally graduated from my great grandmother's sewing machine, and they got me a Kenmore,
Ooh.
this tiny little Kenmore, and I had it, for 20 years, and it actually is pretty amazing. I had it I never had it serviced. I never, not once. I didn't even know that was a thing because remember, like, my mom wasn't really into quilting and things like that, and so I had
Yeah.
no idea about a lot of stuff until I actually joined Quilty Instagram about a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
So looking back, I just think it's funny. And I sewed on that forever until last year when, I started working with Bernina, and so now I have a 570 QE.
Okay. Awesome.
Mhm.
And was that was it just like, I don't know, I'll just pick this one, or did you have what were your reasons for picking that one?
Um, well, we worked together to find a machine that would work best for me, and Bernina is amazing because they have so many options.
Mhm.
They're just they're just really, really good. So I worked with the international team, over in Switzerland, and
Okay.
so I actually don't work with Bernina USA very often. Um, but the 570 QE was small enough that I could move around because I still we're in a bigger house now than a small apartment, but I still don't have like a ton of room. And so I needed something that would kind of fit on my sewing table that I could then pivot easily to then cut,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
pivot back. And so I needed something I could kind of move around. And so I didn't want the biggest machine, but I also didn't want like the smallest machine. And so the 570 QE was just kind of like the perfect bear in the middle there.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I landed on this one.
Awesome. Yeah, we sew on Berninas also. So that's why I was
Yeah.
curious, like why you chose what you chose. And we have an old
Yes.
Artista 730, and we got it just because we were like, well, we can practice with embroidery on it and then also
Yeah.
have a second sewing machine.
Mhm.
And then we got a 535. So
Yeah.
again for the embroidery, but also to have like a nicer kind
Mhm.
of that middle. middle
Yes.
ground machine
Yeah,
that's
and I
not
had a longer throat space too, which I really
yeah.
love. That was my honestly my highest priority because like I don't have a long arm and I mostly quilt all of my quilts just
Mhm.
because I'm very particular about lines and which is so weird, but that perfectionistness comes out in me when I do this. But
Yeah.
I've tried to have things long armed, and for some reason, I think I'm just like I love the pattern that I create, and then to have a pattern laid on top of it sometimes messes with my artistic vision. And so I
Sure.
get really like, I'm like, no, I need a line specifically here and a line specifically here. And so I wanted a machine that could handle some of the quilting that I do.
Yeah. No, and I think that's important because like as much as I love long arming because I'm a long armor, like I
Exactly. Yeah.
completely understand that too. Like I I get the aesthetics I want on my quilts because I am the one
I
quilting
know.
it.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. Honestly, I want a long arm just so I can do like custom, quilts. And now
Mhm.
I don't have to like shove everything into my little machine. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like, if you can quilt your own and, for you, like you're placing the quilting where you want it on your quilt, not having to hope that someone is going to do the same.
Yes, exactly.
But then again, it's like, yeah, if you have a trusted relationship with someone or with a long armor and you know that they kind of match your vision or you can tell them like I want
This is
this
what I want.
and then
Yeah.
they can translate that vision, like that's awesome. But yeah, like just being able to make your vision come to life, however that is like it's such an
Mhm.
important step in the process of
Yeah.
finishing your quilts and
I think if I wasn't a designer, I wouldn't care as much. I think I'd
mhm,
be like, oh, I love these, like I actually love some of the edge to edge designs, like the scallops are so pretty. And like there's
mhm,
some really, really fun geometric ones. But I think because I have to photograph all of them so much, and these cover quilts are used in so many different areas,
mhm.
sometimes those lines can create things that might mess with your photos if you're not careful. And
Yep.
so I think that's why I'm a little bit more particular about it.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense, especially when it's like what your aesthetic is and you want to keep it that way, then like
Yeah.
do what you got to do to make it happen. I
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of just quilt quilt how you want, like make what you want
Yes.
to make it look how you want to make it look and however you get there is
Yeah,
a-okay.
totally.
There's no
Definitely.
like right or wrong path. I mean, there's definitely things that will like really put a wrench in the system if you're not like doing things a certain way, but like as far as long arming versus domestic, quilting on your domestic or
Well, we both know this. Long arming is certainly easier than shoving your entire quilt into a domestic machine.
I mean, yeah, for sure, but yeah, it's, yeah, I'm just a fan of people doing it how they want to do it and
Mhm.
making their quilts look how they want to make. So I think it makes perfect sense that you're like, no, I'm taking creative control over this entire thing
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
have a certain look and that's totally fair because you know you have a brand to uphold as well, so that's kind of like
Mhm. For
the
sure.
other thing you have to pay attention to when you're putting stuff out too. So,
Mhm.
um, so what like is there anything I guess special behind your business name, the Quilted without the E or
I struggled a long time to come up with a name. Um, I think I just wanted something that was very clear and very um it's exactly what I did. You know, looking back, I probably should have chosen something with my name in it. It would have been a little bit easier. But yeah, no, it wasn't. I really wanted to do something that was very meaningful to me, and for some reason, nothing fit quite like I wanted it to. And so I ended up just doing Quilted Studios, partially because I thought it just encompasses, everything that is quilty, everything that I do.
Mhm.
And so I liked that. And it was a little bit more modern.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, like, I was looking at it, I'm like, "Oh, there's no E," and then I was like, "Wait, that's actually kinda cool," because it
It's kind
does
of
feel
different.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it just feels like that more modern, and then, like, I guess my brain went to, like, the LTD without the E on the end was like, "Oh, it's, like, limited edition," like, it feels very, like, high end and, like,
That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're
curated
saying
and
that.
yeah. So, I know I was
It's
like
all things that I wanted. Great.
like, I should ask because I'm wondering
Seriously.
if that's, like, where your brain was at or if it was yeah, but, like, I mean, that
Yeah.
makes sense too, so that's
I wanted it to kind of encompass really my whole brand story, which is, fresh and modern and stylish. If you have a Pottery Barn home, then these quilts should be able to fit into your aesthetic. So
yeah.
I think, ironically enough, I didn't ever really design with this in mind, but I have had so many people reach out and they email me and they're like, I love your designs because I can make them for the men in my life. And I
Mhm.
ended up becoming this like, I just thought it was so funny. It wasn't really my intention, but everyone reaches out and they're like, I made this for my uncle, I made this for my brother, I made this
Right.
for, whatever. And so I unintentionally kind of created this like, I like unisex quilting brand.
Yeah. Which I think is so great because there are, like you were saying, there's so many things out there that's like they're beautiful and they're awesome, but they don't feel very, yeah, like unisex or masculine even. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Which,
think
and I love traditional quilting,
mhm,
which I did for a long time. It wasn't
mhm,
until recently that I started designing my own patterns and then I could finally kind of create what I wanted. But,
yeah,
I grew up making very, very traditional quilt patterns.
yeah. Yeah, there's beauty in all of it. I just think like
Mhm.
what you were saying, like creating something for the gap that you were seeing and obviously other people felt the same thing. So that's
Yeah, I
really
hope so.
cool. And giving them yeah, like an outlet to be like, "Oh my gosh, I can finally make this man in my life a quilt because I haven't found anything that really fits their aesthetic." And that's, I think, so amazing because I think too, like, I mean, I've made quilts for my husband and my sons, and like my mom makes quilts for my dad and her dad. And, it's like we've made quilts for
Yeah.
the men in our lives, but it's like we've just kind of like, let's just throw some squares together or, just made it
Yeah.
very like basic and simple because there's not really a lot of patterns out there that feel like
Yeah. Somewhat more modern and
more
masculine
modern
or
and
yeah.
masculine by nature. And so it's like you can make them that way, but it's like it's nice to like see something and go, oh, that's so clean and crisp and it can be anything. You can take it
Hmm.
any direction and like having that like neutral standing ground, I think is
Yes,
really
exactly.
cool, especially if like because your cover quilts are very like neutral and like
Yeah.
clean slate kind of like, oh, well, that black and white could be any colors or like that
Hmm.
tan and tan and white can be any color. It's like those colors can translate to so many different things. It's not feeling like, oh, my cover quilt is all, florals and colorful and this
Yeah.
very feminine thing. And then it can be really hard for people to see outside of the cover
Yeah.
quilt. So
For
I
sure.
I
Yeah, that
like
is
that.
true. I think I heard someone, I think White Rose Designs, Kelsey, I think she was saying that her mom, like, she likes a very specific color of quilt, and unless it's like she sees it mocked up in that color, she just doesn't make it.
Mm,
And I just thought that was actually really interesting. So in
yeah.
some ways, providing a neutral, maybe that is nice because you could kind of plug in your own style a little bit easier.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I know just for a lot of people, they do struggle kind of envisioning it for themselves. And so I
Yeah.
think if it's a blank slate kind of situation where it's more neutrals and tone on tone
Hmm.
kind of thing, then it is easier to kind of think, well, if that was green or if that was orange, like whatever
Yeah.
color you like,
No, for
then
sure. I usually always love it when my testers, I love sending my pattern out to testers because in some ways, like they always interpret it in ways that I had not anticipated. And, I like to think I could kind of predict what it would look like in different colors, but then when they make it, it's just so much more beautiful or unique than I would have imagined. So yeah, I
mm,
really, really love seeing their versions.
yeah. And I think like having been a tester for a little while and just like making so many quilts because it's like, clients will come and say, I want this quilt, but I want these colors or I want this style. And getting to, like, actually make those so many different quilt patterns with different color schemes
Hmm.
than what's on the cover or, yeah, being in a tester group and seeing things mocked up differently or worked up differently, it's like, oh, it has helped me help clients like work through
Yeah.
trying
Mhm.
different color schemes or seeing, seeing these patterns in different ways. And I love that there are so many designers using testers and then sharing those, because then I think that just does open the door for people to see, look, this
Mhm.
quilt can look so different based on the fabrics you choose. And it helps. I think it just helps overall.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so cool. How fun. I'm just
Do
like,
you do you still test a lot or no? Because 'Cause you're probably super busy with other
I'm
stuff.
so I'm so busy.
Yeah.
I always want to. I'm always like, "Oh, I wanna test that pattern so bad," and, like, I'm so behind because it already got released, but I was supposed to be testing the mini version of, um, Rada's, Cosmic
Oh, yes. She just released
Waterfall.
it.
Yeah, she just
Yeah.
released it, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "I'm so sorry, I haven't even started."
I'm
And
sure
it's
she was
just
like,
the
"It's fine."
I know, she's like, "It's fine, just make it when you want." But,
Yeah.
yeah, I was, like, gonna test the mini version, and I just yeah, we've been so busy, and the start of this year was hectic with, like, we had some deaths in the family and just
I'm
craziness.
sorry.
I know
That's
it's
not good hectic. That's, like, bad
no,
hectic.
it's bad hectic, but, it just is what it is, but it, like, just put kind of a pause on some work stuff that, put us
Yeah, no,
behind,
I
and then
know,
it's
for
like
sure, definitely. I
anyway.
actually I never mind when testers I've every round I do test, I sent out a call. I always get maybe 1 or 2 people who are like, "Sorry, this thing came up," and I'm always like, "I'm sorry that happened to you, like, that
Yeah,
sounds whatever it is, like, please don't worry about a cool pattern, like, that's the last thing,
yeah.
you should be worrying about."
Yeah. Yeah, and she's obviously been, like, so cool about it, but
Yeah,
I
Rana's
just feel
awesome.
bad because I said I would do something that I haven't been able to get to, and
Not yet, though, one
not
day
yet.
you will, it'll be
I
fine.
100% am going to make it. It's just, yeah, finding the time to
Yeah, see,
do
just
it
not
and then
yet.
not yet. But I really do have the goals to, like, have it done for the fall because since I'm doing the mini version, I'm putting it on the back of a denim jacket I have,
Oh, cool.
but
Because
it
she's all
has
about denim.
I know. I was like, "This is so
Yeah, she's
perfect."
so good with denim.
Yeah, yeah, so but it has, like, a Sherpa collar, so I'm like, "That has to wait for fall. I can't wear it anymore."
Yeah, that is yeah, it's here in Vegas, it's definitely get a little bit warmer.
Oh, that's nice. It's still snowing here, so that's fine. It's gross. I'm so upset, but that's fine.
I I know, I actually kind of love living in Vegas. We're only here for a year, but I'm like, I think I would move back. If, like, they weren't actively running out of water, like, as we speak, I would
Yeah,
100% move back.
yeah. We got married in Las Vegas.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's so fun.
yeah. My mother-in-law lived there, but, like which just was coincidental, but yeah, like, when I was in high school, I just was like which is so
Vegas.
silly, but I was, like, 17, and I was like, "If I'm with a person and I feel like, we might get married, if they won't just, like, marry me in Las Vegas, then they're not the one." Like, if they wouldn't just, like, drop everything to be like, "Yeah, I'll marry you in Las Vegas," then, like,
I
that
like that that's your litmus test for, like, your life partner. Like,
that's
will
so
you marry
crazy.
me in Vegas at the drop of a hat? Because if you're
Yeah.
not going to, I'm not interested.
No, honestly, and then I was there, like sorry to my husband for talking about this, but I was there with an ex-boyfriend and, just like a little 3-day weekend thing, and I was like, "We should just wouldn't it be so funny if we just got married?" And he was like, "Absolutely not, like, never." And I was like, "Oh my god." Broke up with him, and
Not right. It wasn't right. So it's a
no.
good litmus test then.
Yeah. So then when I was, dating my husband, I had just gotten out of that relationship, and it was just kinda like, he's quite a not quite a bit, but he's, like, 13 years older than me, and so it's just kind of
Mhm.
like take treading lightly, and he said something or we were watching a movie or something, and he's like, "Yeah, if I get married again, like, it has to be in Las Vegas. I've done Justice of the Peace. I've done a big wedding." And he's like, "It's gotta be in Vegas." And my jaw hit the floor because I had not mentioned marriage or, like, future at all. Like, I
That is
was like, "I'm
so
not
funny.
bringing it up. I'm not talking about it. I'm just gonna, like, take this for what it
Yeah, just
is."
like whatever happens, happens.
And I
And
was
then he's
like
like, "Let's go, Vegas."
yeah, I mean, we waited. We had been together for, like, 4 years by the time we got married, but
Yeah.
It was just so funny that, like, he's the one who said that, and then I was like, "You're gonna think I'm just copying you because girls do that." I said, "But I swear on my life, on my baby sister's life that, like, this is something." And he was like, "No." Even we're, like, on our wedding day, like, w going to the chapel, and he's like, "You made this up." And I was like, why would I follow through with, like, making my family come to Las Vegas and,
That
like,
is so
doing this
true.
whole thing?"
That would be very intense, wouldn't it? Like,
Yeah, I'm like, "We even did the whole Elvis thing," like,
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
yeah.
I
It was
love being down on this trip because you see so many brides, you see
mhm.
so many wedding parties down there, and it's really fun. It's so fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was super fun, and I'm so grateful that we did it that way because 'cause I'm kinda like you where I mean, having a podcast doesn't seem like it, but I don't necessarily like to be the center of attention, and so
Yeah.
making all the decisions, which is again another like, I wonder how I'm gonna run a business when I don't like making decisions. But I guess when it comes to, like, deciding things for other people, like, "This is what you're going to eat at my wedding, and this is the dress I'm gonna wear," and this
It's stressful. Wedding planning is stressful no matter what. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, it's always stressful, and that's only because you have, like, 2 families you're trying to
Mhm.
before they've even, like, really gotten to, like, work together on anything, suddenly they're planning this giant event together, like, it's just difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was crazy, but also it was so fun, and yeah, if they weren't actively running out of water, it'd probably be such a nice place to hang out, but there's so many
Yeah.
cool things going on all the time too, so
There's always something fun to do here, which I just love.
yeah. We actually went back in this last summer because it was our 10th anniversary, and so
So
we just,
cute.
like I know, it was so fun. We, like, started there, and then we went to Spain from Las Vegas, but
Oh, wow, yeah, okay. That's
yeah, yeah. I was
that's
like,
a
"We
great
should."
10-year anniversary.
It was fantastic, like, because we didn't really get, like, a full honeymoon, like, we stayed
No, we didn't either, we were so
on, like
poor. I mean, I took the
I
LSAT, if
was
that
like,
says anything
You
about
were
how
taking
our
an
honeymoon went.
LSAT?"
Yeah, and he was doing finals, like, 2 weeks after that, so, like, it just
Yeah.
wasn't even yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we were pretty broke at the time too, so it was just kinda like, I had just graduated, I didn't have a teaching job yet, like, he was still in school full time because he went back to school while I was still in school to get a different degree, and, like, it was a madhouse, but yeah, so we were like, "Okay, we're gonna finally do a big trip," and anyway, it was really fun, and I actually interviewed a Bernina shop owner in Barcelona while we were there, so
No way, that's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, Anna Martinez, she was so sweet and, like, she was like, "Oh, my English teacher is gonna be so excited because I'm practicing my English." I'm like, "You're doing so great."
You know what, Europeans are incredible. I lived in Italy for, like well, I was there for a study abroad for, like, 4 months, and then I went back for 18 months, and
Okay.
honestly, I was just amazed at how sorry, my husband just came in.
It's okay.
"Are you okay? What's wrong?" "Oh, you forgot your shoes, okay." I was like, "You should not be home, you should be at a hospital right now."
Why aren't you saving lives?
"Ah, what happened?" I was gonna say, working with Europeans is so fun because in some ways they are so well educated. Like
Yeah,
everyone knows 3 languages. Everyone knew Italian, they spoke British English, Spanish, and like a little bit of some other language like German. And I was
yeah,
like, wow, you guys are incredible. They're all just amazing.
yeah, yeah. I was like, "Oh my gosh," we're, like, honestly, seriously considering moving to Spain and when he's done with it, because he's my husband's back in school again, and,
What is he doing? What is he studying?
I don't know, he's just obsessed with learning. No, he is doing a master's program for counseling, so
Oh, okay, cool. That's
but,
awesome.
like, he comes from, like, his first degree is in mathematics, and then his second degree that he got was, in computer science, and so
Wow. Yeah, you're right. That is a little bit of a departure from his
yeah,
prior degrees.
yeah, so but, I mean, it's the perfect fit for him, like, he is an analytical mind, but, like, mental health has always been his, like,
Mhm.
soapbox and the drum he marches to, so
That's really cool.
yeah, it feels like a good fit, and anyway, so yeah, yeah, it was just super fun to, like, interview. Like, my husband was like, "We should just try finding somebody to interview." I'm like, "That makes me so nervous because like, my Spanish is so bad."
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be a
And
little nervous too.
but she was so great, and, like, her little Bernina shop was so cute, and,
Oh.
like it's just kind of fun to see stuff like that. There was another quilt shop we found, but um yeah, she was the only one to get back to us. And
Yeah.
anyway, it was
It's
super
it's
fun.
fun it's fun how, worldwide quilting is, and I don't know that
Yeah.
I had really realized that until probably about 6 months into my business that,
Mhm.
I started doing Instagram Reels more regularly, and Reels just, like, get pushed out worldwide, like,
Mhm.
they're not just getting pushed out to, like, your local community, kind of like other posts may on Instagram, and
Yeah.
I was just amazed at how many people would post, like, certain things in Portuguese or, in Spanish or things like
Mhm.
that, like, all over the world, quilters are like, "I love this, I can't wait to make it," and I
Yeah.
just thought, "This is really cool." It's so, like, worldwide.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's getting more global, like, because I had chatted with Katarina Rochella, and she's in Croatia, and in Serbia, and she was talking about how when she started designing fabric like 14 years ago, there just wasn't a community for it in Europe, or anywhere near
Mhm.
where she was. And so she started designing fabric and designing patterns because she couldn't find it where she was at. And now that everything is like online for the
Yeah,
majority of things, like now it's getting a lot more globalized and more people can get into it. But I just don't think it was as big of an industry there before. And so,
yeah,
like, it's nice to see that everybody everywhere can like enjoy this thing that we love so much, that is kind of like an Americana type,
yeah. There are
of
definitely some parts of quilting that I think are very American-centric, but then
yeah.
there's all sorts of different worldwide quilting, patterns and trends and things like that. It would be so fun to learn more about,
Yeah.
the basis of their quilts and where that comes from.
Yeah. Just like understand how it permeates everywhere, because I think it's like the same. There's, some traditional like indigenous type designs that obviously
Mhm.
have been like appropriated and then
Yeah,
reclaimed by the people, which is great. But then
classic.
it's like, yeah, but then it's like, oh, actually, some of this is like a really, you know, old European type style, like
Mhm.
indigenous peoples would design their weaving this way. And then also it's found very similarly in the, you know, indigenous American tribes.
Yeah.
So there is kind of like similar feel to some of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's just interesting to learn more about like where certain patterns or certain like design
Mhm.
motifs come from, because a lot of them do have a really long history of being
Yeah.
in the culture long before that came to America or like was in
Mhm.
quilting. So
For
anyway,
sure.
kind of fumbled that out, but anyway, I
I
think you
don't
know
know
what I'm
much
trying to
about
say.
that, so I
I know. Yeah, but it would be interesting to learn more about, because I think every time I do learn something like that, I'm like, "What? I had no idea." And so,
Mhm. For sure.
but yeah, I think you're right. It is very American centric. So I think expanding that would be really cool.
Mhm.
But I don't know who's going to do it. It's not going to be me. You're the history person. You should do it.
Yeah, it's I don't have time for that. I don't know that anyone someone else has gotta be more passionate about that than I am, but
Right? I mean, it's like maybe at a quilt museum, but like how many
and,
towns have a
I
quilt
think
museum?
actually, there are some quilt historians that come to, like, a QuiltCon occasionally, right, and do talks
Hmm.
and things like that. I think that'd be so interesting to attend, listen to.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely wanna try to attend something like that for next QuiltCon, because I'm gonna go. I'm so excited,
Are you?
and
I'm trying to go next year too. I haven't gone ever, really,
I
and
haven't
so
either. Yeah, next
yeah.
year will be my first time, but, we were gonna try to go this year, but then like I said earlier, my little brother's getting married, and it's in a few weeks, and so we're just like, "Hmm, maybe we should,
Yeah,
like."
that's a lot.
It's a lot of big trips and all at once, and so we were just kinda like, "Well, we'll just wait and we'll go next time," and then it's close to them again, like because they live on the East Coast, and so
Mhm.
it being in Raleigh, it'll be close to them again, so we can still visit them and it'll be fun. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I was looking at some of the possibilities of like, yeah, visiting lectures with quilt historians and just learning about that kind of stuff. So that would be cool.
It would be cool.
Anyway, so do you have like a tip or a trick that you just can't live without that you use like every time you're sewing, or just something that kind of revolutionized the way that you sew?
I think there's something that I didn't do growing up with a lot of my quilts, and I think you could kind of tell that I just started doing really about a year and a half ago, and that is I iron and starch like all of my fabrics religiously before beginning, and I never took the time to do that before, but now that I do, I can really see a difference in really the quality. I don't want to say quality because everyone's quilting is their quilting, it doesn't matter, but when you are trying to make a quilt that is as accurate to a mock-up as possible, you really do have to have accurate, seam allowances and cutting and things like that. But I will say the thing that makes the biggest difference for me is ironing and starching my fabrics beforehand.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it can definitely make a difference, especially if you're working with a cotton that's a little stretchier than maybe the other one that you're pairing it with, or
Yes, exactly. So I
'cause
use Art Gallery fabrics most of the time, and then occasionally like Kona, but
mhm,
I work a little bit with Art Gallery, and their fabrics are so vibrant and lovely, but also a little slippery. And so
mhm.
when I starch them, it becomes a little bit easier to work with, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've experienced that as well, and I love ooh, I'm obsessed with art gallery, so,
Yeah, they're
um,
amazing. They're
and
fantastic, and they're very
yeah,
supportive of designers. Like they go
mhm,
out of their way to make sure that like designers are supported. So they're
yeah,
great.
yeah, I love them, but I just before I got on here with you, I ordered all the fabrics to make my youngest son's, graduation quilt,
Oh, that's exciting.
and I'm using all art gallery solids. I'm so
Mm,
excited.
I love their solids. Their pure solids are amazing.
Yeah, so it's gonna be he wants, like, purples and cream and black. So
That'll be
we're gonna
cool.
we're gonna go with it. It's gonna be
Yeah, this is quilt.
yeah, it's gonna be awesome, and I've only ever made quilts out of only solids for other people, so this will be another one of those, but I'm excited because it's not very often where I get to just work with solids either, so it's, like, kind of
You
a
know what? There's
treat.
something really beautiful about solids because they're very clean. In some
Mhm.
ways it creates these very clean lines, and I adore it. I love it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it is. It's like print fabrics are great. I love them. I'm a big fan, but yeah, there's something just like kind of magical with quilts made with
mhm.
solids because it's like almost
Well,
yeah.
the thing is you can't hide. I think that's the thing is that you cannot hide like patterns in some ways. Well, prints, sorry, I should say.
Mhm,
Prints in some ways are so fun and they kind of keep your eye moving. But
mhm,
if you're using a solid and you've got a very simple clean line pattern, like it has to be excellent. Like it
mhm.
has to be really well done. Otherwise, like you can see and it's very apparent.
Yeah. I'm a little nervous for the quilt he wants because it is a lot. It's all half square triangles.
Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be okay. Even if some of them don't match up, it's not a big deal.
I know. I was like, this quilt that's behind me, it's like the third quilt I ever made.
It's cute. I
And
like it.
thanks. It's a 3-footer, like, you gotta stay 3 feet away, otherwise it's real ugly, but
Everyone has like multiple quilts
I
like
know.
that.
I was, like, nitpicking it last night. I was, like, sitting in here with my husband, and I was like, "Oh, look at these seams." Like, if I had just actually used the seam allowance, like, these points would have lined up, these blocks wouldn't be off. He's like, "I literally never would have noticed that if you didn't
No, you
just point it
wouldn't.
out."
And honestly, you learned too, and that's the whole point, right? Like you're
Yeah,
gonna have like 20 quilts that you learn different skills while you're
yeah,
making.
yeah. I'm like, it's just funny because like, I felt like this was my best quilt at the time, and honestly, out of 3, it was, but, like, now that I've made, like, over 100 quilts, it's like, "Oh."
It's
But
hard to go back and be like, "Yikes."
yeah, but again, like, baby quilter me was like, "It's not bad. There's only 2 popped seams." So
No, and you know what? I remember a lot of my earlier quilts, like my seam allowances would, stay at a quarter inch, but then it'd go so narrow. And then
mhm.
whenever they were narrow, like it would just become a hole, and I'd have to like somehow patch up these little tiny holes.
Yeah,
Like,
that's exactly how this guy is. There's some little
and
spots where I'm like,
honestly, yeah, it's just part of learning. And I
"Mhm."
have a lot of beginner quilters who email me and they're like, "Hey, I'm starting, this gingham quilt. Like, do you have any advice?" And I'm like, you just don't need advice because all you have to do is just start making quilts to get better. Like, this is literally the only way. And your first 10 quilts will be kind of like wonky and like the sides won't be straight and you'll wonder
Mhm.
how everyone has perfect corners, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. But later on, like you'll slowly learn,
Mhm.
like easier techniques and things like that. You'll get better.
Yeah, for sure, and it's like, I knew about quarter-inch seam allowance, and I knew how to do it, but I think for me, I was like, I don't wanna waste any of this fabric, and,
I know,
like, I
yes,
want
hard.
so it feels in my brain at the time, it just felt wasteful to lose a half an inch off of the piece of
Mhm.
fabric I just cut, and now I'm like, "Well, I get it, and it's fine, and everything's gonna be fine." Like
Yeah. Oh, it's also different too if you're under like budget constraints, because I remember like in high school, I didn't have a ton of money to spend on quilting. And
Mhm.
so, in some ways, like you just have to work with what you have.
Exactly, and there's so much room for that, like, you can quilt with anything if you know how to work with the fabric or just wanna
Yes,
have enough gumption to figure out how to work with the type of fabric that it is, and
for
I mean
sure. And in some ways, like that's really the history of quilting, right? Is
yeah,
like they would take old like flour sacks and dresses and things like that and cut them up.
mhm,
So it's pretty cool.
yeah, that's so fun. Well, do you have any fun projects coming up soon that people can look forward to, or I will admit, I'm a little behind on some of my deadlines right now, but that's because I'm taking Bonnie Christine's immersion course. Okay.
And it has been so fun, but also a little more intense than I was anticipating. And
Oh,
so it is taking more hours of my quilting time than I, was thinking it would. So I do have another quilt pattern coming out probably in 3-ish months. It was gonna come out before then, but I think I'm just gonna put it off until I'm done with this course. So
okay.
yeah, another quilt pattern is coming out. I'll probably do another reels course in the spring because I love teaching people about how to make Instagram reels and
I might need to take that.
um,
I suck at reels.
they're so fun. If you learn how to make them easy, quickly,
Mhm.
they're so fun. Now, in the beginning, if you don't know what you're doing, and that was me, and you're taking an hour to like edit a small, like, 10-second video, like it can
Yeah,
get really, really tiring. But
yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. So cool, and then I'll put links to your website and everything in the show notes so that listeners can go find you just in one click and look for those things, so that's awesome.
Perfect. Well,
Well,
thanks for having me. I
yeah,
appreciate it. It was fun chatting with you.
yeah, thanks for joining me, and I'm looking forward to seeing your new pattern come out, but yeah, I honestly will probably sign up for that Instagram course because I
Please do.
I
Let me
need
know.
help.
I'll give you a discount.
Okay, I'll tell you, I'll be like, "I'm
Email
signing up."
me.
I will.
Please
Yeah.
do.
Okay, well, thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.